My name is Tepay, and I am from the island of Negros Occidental in the Philippines. And I want to tell you a story about how I was cursed to live with a Kapre. Darkness seeped through the bamboo slats, creeping through each space in the floor and the walls. Somehow, it was repelled by the small rays of light from our lamp. The smell of a cigar danced in the darkness and was welcomed into our little home. The bitterness stung my nose. My cousin was staying with us that night, and I glanced in her direction. Her smooth, black hair rested tenderly on her shoulders, and her deep chocolate eyes looked back at me as I looked at her. She was beautiful. She could have been a model, and we always had fun together. "Do you smell that?" I asked, almost wanting to cough from the smell. Angel looked at me with a puzzled look on her face. "Huh? What smell?" she asked with a half smile. I didn't think any more of it. I'd not seen Angel in a long time, so we just sat there, chatting and marites about everything in our lives. Soon the hands of the clock crawled towards 12 a.m, and my eyes started to feel heavy. I wished Angel a good night's sleep, and I slumbered off to bed. My husband was already snoring, and his rhythmic breathing didn't do anything to comfort me that night. The second hand moved slowly, like it was trying to push through a thick layer of sand. I could hear every painful tick as the clock marched forward. My mind struggled to leave the land of wakefulness and seek refuge in sleep. As the long black minute hand crashed into the 12 and time reached 2 a.m, it happened. It was very subtle at first. A finger started to run along my chest. It felt ticklish. I thought it was my husband being naughty, but he was fast asleep. The unseen finger moved across my chest, almost in a sensual manner, tracing the curves of my body. The soft touches soon turned into something more violent and evil. My body started to get pushed into the bed. I could feel the foam molding around my small body, a heavy weight pressed down onto my chest. I tried to breathe, and I couldn't inhale. Tears started streaming from my eyes as I tried to scream. The weight of my body was too strong. I felt this was my last day of life if I didn't do anything. Pulling my arm to move, it flailed into the darkness. There was a loud, solid crack as it hit my husband. He grunted loudly as he grabbed his nose. "What the hell, Tepay?" he screamed in pain. "Turn on the light," I whispered, fighting for breath. The room flared into view, and my eyes were drawn to the foot of the bed. My heart fluttered like a scared child hiding in the night. It was painful. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. A dark shape loomed over me, its hands raised towards my body, and it was staring at me. Its dark eyes gleamed with something sinister. It looked like it wanted to harm me. I blinked my eyes momentarily, and it was gone in a wisp of smoke. My husband immediately took me to the hospital. He managed to find a tricycle and bundled me inside like a fragile child. And all the way to the hospital, I didn't speak a word. I could feel its hateful stare. I couldn't escape. At the hospital, I was immediately rushed into a room where they conducted every test you could imagine. I was led into the X-ray theatre and was instructed to lay down on the bed and stay perfectly still. The scanner was lowered over my chest, and the nurse looked down at me. Her warm smile gave me a moment of peace before a sense of malice washed over me. The hairs on my body quaked with panic. I could sense whatever this presence was, it was nearby. I wanted to run as far as I could. I am sure it was still watching me, out there in the darkness. A week passed and things were starting to return to normal. The doctor thought I might be suffering from panic attacks, and that was the reason behind my mysterious affliction. Finally, all the tests returned and my health was perfect. So I decided to put it behind me and return to my usual carefree self. That was until I went to bed that night, and the sense of dread crept into me again. The same weight returned without warning, and it was crushing me. It felt like someone was lying on top of me. Their massive weight was squeezing all the air out of my body. An unbearable heat started radiating from the top of my head, and it coursed down my body in a wave. Each cell screamed as it was in pain, like it was being cooked from the inside. The heat suddenly stopped at my waist. A barrier prevented it from going any further. My legs felt like they were encased in ice. I couldn't regulate the heat in my body. I was crying, and the tears came freely. My groaning must have woken my husband up. He was in a panic, Tepay, what's wrong? Speak to me, he demanded. I couldn't answer. He didn't say any more. He scooped me up in his arms and took me back to the hospital again. They conducted more tests, and once again, everything came back all clear. Albularyo, a voice cried out in my mind. The faith healer. That must be the answer. The next day, I called for the tricycle. It pulled up outside my home. I climbed inside and asked them to take me to the barangay, where my cousin, Danica, lived. As soon as I sat in the tricycle, my chest tightened. It felt like something didn't want me to leave and was forcing me to stay. Somehow, I managed to force myself to keep going. Wrapping my arms tightly around my chest, I tried to calm myself. Forcefully, I willed myself to steady my breathing, and in tiny, shallow breaths, I managed to pull myself out of the panic. The city soon gave way to fields of sugarcane. The green stalks swayed in the breeze. It was calming. I wondered what it would be like to be one of the birds flying over the sea of the cane stalks, free of all this pain and sorrow. I soon arrived at my aunt's house in the province. Her house was built from hollow blocks, painted a light shade of green. The bamboo and cement steps always made me feel like a small child as I struggled to climb up them. My auntie was sitting at the table and she was surprised to see me. She said I didn't look like myself, and it was like I had a heavy weight on my shoulders. She told me that I should go and see the Albularyo immediately, and told Danica to come with me. We headed up into the mountain where the Albularyo lived. The path was rough and muddy. The large trees looked like they were trying to touch the sky. Their long, slender fingers were delicate and adorned with fine green jewelry. As we walked, my chest started to tighten. I grabbed Danica's arm, and she grunted painfully as my fingers bit into her. There was something in the trees. I could feel it. It was watching me with those dark eyes. I had to keep going. I couldn't quit now. I would not let this thing win. The forest soon gave way to a small village with 6 tiny houses. They were traditionally built out of bamboo and thatched with nipa. It was strange. There was no children here. No matter where you go in the Philippines, there is always children running and playing. In the middle of the small village was a small wooden church. Its walls were badly painted with stripes of white paint. There was no windows. Red tin covered the roof, and a small wooden crucifix made of 2 old wooden planks were attached above the church's entrance. The church door started open. It creaked loudly as the rusty hinges complained. An old man stepped outside. His silver hair was wispy and thin, and his eyes were white, staring back at me. Clearly they hadn't seen for quite some time. He was thin and looked like he had not eaten a proper meal in years. His bones poked roughly against his skin. A frail hand reached out in my direction. It shook against the air, and a bony finger pointed at me. "I've been waiting for you. Now come inside," he demanded in a harsh voice. I hurried inside as the old man wanted. Inside the church, there were 6 women. They were dressed in white robes, and their faces were encased in a veil, making it impossible to see them. They motioned for me to come and sit on a chair that was in the center of the room. Looking around nervously, I tried to take in my environment. There was a painting on the wall of a triangle with a large eye painted in the center. I don't know why, but that painting terrified me. "Tepay, approach the altar," one of the ladies whispered to me. Fear swept over me. The Albularyo stood behind the altar, his hands outstretched towards the heavens. He was mumbling something I couldn't understand. Each time I tried to step, it felt like there was a heavy weight attached to my feet. I could barely lift them. They scraped painfully against the concrete as I walked. The altar was made of fine oak and stained dark gold. Strange characters were etched into the wood. I couldn't understand them. A cloth rested on top of the altar. An image of a person was on it. It reminded me of myself. But how? How could that be possible? On top of the image was a large book. Its large cover had fine red markings inlaid into the bindings. "Put your hand on the book, and do not take it off, no matter what happens," the old man warned me. I hesitated for a moment, but the Albularyo sensed I was resisting. He smiled warmly at me. My fingers reached out and touched the book. There was a chill rush that ran through my entire body. It reminded me of that night. The old man reached out and placed his hand on top of mine. His eyes started to roll backwards as he started speaking words I didn't recognize. I could feel the same tightness returning to my body. My lungs had stopped working. Someone is in love with you. No, not someone, but something that's not human, the Albularyo whispered. His fingers started to twitch and spasm as he spoke. It's a natural tall, black, skin covered in black fur. His hair is blacker than the night, and he is strong. It's a Kapre, and he wants to take you, Tepay. He will take you away, Tepay, and there is nothing you can do. My legs started to feel weak. I no longer had the strength to stand. My eyes began to lose focus, but somehow I kept standing. When your chest hurts, that is when the Kapre is trying to hold you close. He will take you soon. Those were the last words I heard as I faded to unconsciousness. Every night I dream of him now. He is always watching me. I see his dark eyes in every shadow, knowing he is waiting to take me. There is no escape from him. I never believed in the stories of the Kapre falling in love with a girl before. How wrong I was. I must go now. The smell of smoke is getting stronger. He is coming for me. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's lullaby. If you enjoy my content, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, Roselle, the woman who gave us that wonderful performance in Tagalog about an Aswang, will be returning very shortly to tell us another scary Aswang story. Now remember, keep watching for what's in the dark.